with the CM Punk angle, I think you and I would both be agreeing that it was so good about a month and a half ago. Excuse me, by the way. And
you didn't mean that, of course.
Yeah. And it was so well, but it's very obvious to me at this point that angle only appeals to, or emotionally at least, that only a small portion of the audience gets into it. Now, whether that's because they've done a lousy follow-up with it and they haven't really explained it, or maybe just not that many people are into CM Punk, like mainstream. I don't know what the answer is, but it seems to me that the WWE, I don't know if they have an audience problem or the audience is a problem, if that makes sense.
Okay.
In that, back in the day, wrestling audiences were very homogenous.
Right.
I mean, in the 80s, it's interesting now. Now it's obviously a lot easier. Most guys would prefer to be heel because it's easier to be a heel. When back in the day, it was pretty easy to be a babyface in the cartoonish WWE. You just kind of got like a silly, the junkyard dog. He came out with his little music. He had
cakes.
He grabbed them cakes. He had his chain. He, brought kids in the ring and danced, and he was over. Okay,
yeah.
I mean, he had a lot of charisma too. I'm simplifying it.
Right.
Jake Roberts had a snake. People cheered for him. It was pretty simple. But and genuinely, fans cheered for the good guys. They booed the bad guys.
Yeah.
Right. Now and I don't know if it's because they don't really book anymore. They just write, or what, or they just misinterpreted the audience so many times. There's been so many botched angles. But the audience is clearly smarter now than it used to be, and the internet has a lot to do with that.
Right.
But people just seem to cheer for who they wanted. Like, CM Punk is so interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And John Cena is almost kind of like the inverse of him, in a way, where CM Punk, they could have him do any angle, I think, right now. And granted, because of the PG, I mean, that the ceiling's a little limited on what they could do. You know, I mean, like, you brought up offhand when we were talking about this a little bit, the Dudleys, power bombing, 80-year-old Mae Young or whatever she was.
Right.
You can't do that anymore. And what's funny is that's what actually turned the babyface.
That is.
So it just showed how different it is. The old, my God, they just hit an old woman. And, it's supposed to get this huge heel heat. That doesn't work anymore. But my point is, with CM Punk, he's a very difficult wrestler to book in the same way I think that John Cena is. Because there's going to be a substantial portion of the audience that no matter what he does will always cheer him.
Okay.
Much like Cena, no matter what they have him do, unless if he just, I don't know, the only way is maybe if he, even if he had, he's improved now. From when, we did the old SNS shows, he stunk.
Right.
And was not having the caliber matches that you need to be having in his spot. But he's okay now. He's had good matches.
Right.
And granted, he's had some good dance partners, so to speak. But just like him, no matter what he does, people will always boo him. So my point is, the WWE is, it's such an interesting time period where I think that the audience and a lack of maybe understanding and the audience being just kind of difficult has made it hard for them to have these kind of good angles because you don't have that, okay, everyone's going to get behind this guy and like Steve Austin, Vince McMahon.
Right.
Perfect storm. Vince McMahon, douche. Everyone is going to boo him. No one was really cheering for Vince McMahon. And Steve Austin, everyone's going, you just don't have that anymore. And it's so difficult. I don't know if I did the best job of explaining that because you've made several confused faces in the last 5 minutes.
I had what might have been a little bit of a revelation here. Are you indicating perhaps that the concept of the Impact Zone dueling crowds, is that phenomenon making its way through here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right.
Well, here's my thing. The WWE has not had a successful wrestling angle. What was the last successful wrestling angle they did? Let's talk about this. Because when you look at... all right,
what level success? Boom success or just a really good angle?
All right.
Because Triple H Batista was pretty doggone good for something that wasn't in a boom.
You're right, it was. You're right, and it was very successful. All right, let's talk about this. 2000 financially was the best year the company ever had.
Yep.
Okay? So let's think post that year, okay?
Okay.
Because obviously the time period where everyone starts playing fantasy booker, they should have done this, is the Invasion.
Yeah.
That stunk. Okay, and now it still did okay money just because of what it was, but it was obviously failed. They didn't do it right. It was not booked properly. Then you had the Hogan thing, okay?
Okay.
That didn't work right, okay? Some say that it might. I mean, they had a very famous match with Rock. But the the NWO, I should say.
Yeah.
That was kind of a bust.
Major underachievement.
The brand extension was kind of, their next big thing. I'm just throwing things out there, too. That was like... kind of over. I've always hated it. You know my opinion.
Yeah,
on the brand.
I have too.
Because and let's talk about those three things, okay?
Okay.
The invasion, and people don't, obviously they did not give the WCW guys a fair shake.
No.
But here's the problem: there was a certain portion, audience issues.
Mm-hmm.
Look, we can talk about, you and I can talk about that Chavo Guerrero and Lance Storm are these underrated guys, and they're finally going to get a big chance.
Right.
And they should be. The bottom line is this: should they have really been? Would the audience at large have bought them? Like if Lance Storm should have started beating the Undertaker one week on Raw, would the audience have bought that?
No, but that's like a caricature type argument, because to say that DDP, Booker T,
they could
should have been.
Yes,
yeah, I mean, the guys that were on the cusp, guys that had held the big gold in the other promotion, those are the guys at a bare minimum that should have been booked stronger. I think we can agree on that, and I've heard enough of your rants about DDP and Undertaker and Sarah on the old SNS to know that you agree with me.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Look, like I said, it wasn't done properly.
Right.
But that angle did lack star power from the, it was because it was
they didn't bring in the guys. Right.
But here's the thing. So I think that there was an issue there, and McMahon realized that he didn't execute it properly, follow through on it, that the crowd just didn't view that WCW. It wasn't this idea. Basically, the whole legacy of that was you got a couple dream matches, Rock, Hogan. But here's the interesting. Hogan is a better example of what I'm trying to say here. He's a much better example. Let's go to that, the Hogan thing, okay?
Okay.
Now, I'm like one of 5 people that don't really like that match against The Rock.
Okay.
Because I remember watching it and being like, why, Toronto, are you doing this?
Do you not like it because of the legacy of what it spawned? I mean, can you watch it just for the moment itself and say that was a great moment in time?
It was a great moment.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of that Hogan-Andre scale where it's not a good match.
Right.
It's a great moment.
Right.
It's something that fits nice on a video package.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing with Hogan, okay? Obviously, people if the WWE could have had their dream scenario with the invasion, let's say they could have just done the invasion perfectly from that. They didn't have to worry about buying these contracts out. They just got the WCW
Goldberg,
roster.
Scott Steiner, they're all in it.
Yes.
Sting. Okay.
Okay. You probably have Hogan as your lead WCW guy because, well, first of all, you have to be realistic. He wouldn't have taken it any other way.
Right.
Okay. The crowd didn't. It's interesting that the crowd really was the one who kind of sabotaged their angle from their perspective by cheering for him, and they didn't expect that. Remember, it was like this, they talked about during the fan weekend. They're like, wow, Hogan's really pretty popular here in Toronto.
Yeah.
They were like, it's a real 50-50 crowd here, folks.
Yeah.
With The Rock, and it's interesting that okay, everyone's like, well, okay, you have Hogan come in and lead this big heel group of WCW guys. I don't think that would have worked. Because there's a certain portion of the crowd that just said, screw it. You think we're cheering for Hogan?
No, you know what? Here's the thing. I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. As somebody who went to the Invasion pay-per-view.
I was there.
Yeah. And heard all the Mizarks around me, like, we're going to cheer for our guys to beat these here outsiders. Who do these WCW wrestlers think they are coming in here?
You just had some bad seats.
Yeah. Dude, I was surrounded by that, by all of them. I mean, you think those people would have embraced the outsiders? They bought the invasion angle. It was over. They really, really did. These are our WWF homegrown
wrestlers.
That's
the WWE universe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really,
home team, road team. I'm telling you.
Yeah. That group was. I don't know. To me, I don't think a lot of people bought it. I think to me, it's so interesting. And Hogan is an example, like that. Look, we don't care how this guy's booked.
Right.
We just like this guy, and shame on maybe it is the WWE's fault for not understanding who the crowd likes and who they don't. Now, CM Punk is real interesting because you would think, based on the the CM Punk chants are very audible.
They
obviously, that you would think that he's got to be a baby face, but it doesn't seem like it's working like the way it should. I don't know if you watch Raw. It seems like it's been diminished returns every week. Okay, what's interesting is when he initially cut the angle.
Yeah,
he did so as a heel.
He did.
It
was meant to go that way.
And it's funny because he even healed on the fans a little bit.
He did.
And that has not been brought up again.
Right.
And to me, it's just like I watch it, and it's just the way that when you have booking, it's like, okay, this is who the crowd likes, this is who they don't like. And it just seems like they keep screwing up on that. You have guys not in the right roles, and
they've come close, I think, to addressing the fact that the first promo was a heel promo, and here's how, in an unspoken way, because it's a thing where they seem to be referring to that moment, that was like the transformative moment of CM Punk's career, if not his life. That he was a guy who was going along and dealing with these frustrations and everything like that, but that it seems to now be accepted within the canon of their universe that on that night in June 2011, he grabbed the mic and he changed everything. And that...
But did he change? And this may be why the angles don't work, because it didn't change anything. It didn't seem.
Well, that's true.
Because here he is. He's not the champion. He's a little higher on the card. Okay, he gets featured in the better time slots now. He gets protected a little more. He obviously had a phenomenal, one of the, probably the best 20 matches in the history of the company.
Yeah.
And that's good. He probably gets paid. He definitely gets paid more. But nothing's really changed. Here's what's interesting to me: the booking has been so bad over the last 10 years. Do you ever get the sense that fans sometimes just cheer for guys who are being booked correctly?
Sure.
Do you ever The Miz is an example. The Miz is such a classic heel.
Yeah.
He's a douche that came from the real world that did not, he didn't grow up as a wrestling fan. I'm not,
right.
I'm not, even though he did,
right.
He did actually grow up as a wrestling fan. But he kind of like, I'm a star. I'm too good for
right.
you people. But remember, at the Money in the Bank, people were cheering for him in the match because he's kind of booked. Del Rio's the same way too. In some occasions, where he's a classic heel, and he gets cheers just because he's being booked properly.
But the Miz has. I mean, here's the funny thing. I listened to your old SNS shows from '06. And let's keep in mind, I'm going to say this in your defense when I say how much you were bearing him. They tried to shoehorn him in as a face. They had no self-awareness about this character.
By the way, there's a show, if you find, I'm not tooting my own horn here, that I said if you turned him heel, he could be a honky-tonk man. There is a show out there that exists, and me and the little fellow, we talked about that.
That's true. But you guys at the time really saw nothing in him, said that he would be on your cut list for the company.
Because he was being booked bad.
I understand.
Yeah,
I'm not saying this to throw it back in your face, but it's a thing where you look at it now. He's been such an effective heel. There were people making comparisons around the time of WrestleMania, and maybe it's a little bit lazy, but there is something almost Rock-like in this guy's charisma as far as, like, even when he's a bad guy out there, people are finishing the catchphrases and everything. He could be very effective as the cool heel turned anti-hero face. I think that there's a role for him in that.
See, to me,
that's coming.
To me, I don't think the Miz would be a good face.
I think that's
I do not think the Miz should ever.
That.
I do not think he should ever be a face.
They'll do that, and I think it'll work.
To me, like when I look at the Miz, it's like it's just like, to me, like Rock is a little different. But to me, I always would like the Rock better as a heel myself.
He did some great stuff. Back in
great
03.
stuff.
Yeah, in 03.
And, I'm talking, 98. So, I mean, too.
Well, I'm thinking about when there was the backlash against him and he played into it.
Yeah, well, see, that's good because once again, but here's what's interesting about that. He did do a great job, but it was because some people still cheered him. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It just, I guess my whole point in this, and I don't know if I've explained it well or not. Whenever I watch it, wrestling these days, it just always strikes me that the days of just like the Hamad where everyone's cheering for one guy, everyone's booing this guy. The days of the Junkyard Dog is over. You know what I'm saying? I mean, to me, the dueling chance is kind of like stupid, but like I don't know. I think it's very tough. I think they don't understand. The company does not understand how to interpret the modern crowd.
But you've always put over, and I go back to your old SNS shows there. Vince McMahon, shades of gray. You tell us what you want. Well, what's wrong with that?
Nothing, but here's the problem. They don't know how to interpret it. People are telling him his problem is
people are telling him
simple.
Contradictory things is what they're telling him. Some people are telling him one thing, some people are telling him another thing.
That's true, and also he doesn't listen.
That's true.
They don't.
He just pretends to listen.
You get this fat Kevin Dunn in the room, okay? Saying what he has to say.
Yeah.
And there's certain guys. It's Bizarro Land,
Triple H Eugene SummerSlam 04, also in Toronto. It's Bizarro Land here, folks.
Yeah.
Everybody cheered Triple H.
Exactly. To me, it's just. I think they're almost cheering good booking now, and booing. Like to me, it's like look at the guys that don't get much of a reaction.
Right.
It's not because they're not good guys. They're not bad. It's their booking is just bad, and no one cares really.
Well, let me ask you, to turn this full circle on the whole thing with today's audience and everything, it's been so long since, and maybe we're at the start of the healing point here, when we can look back at any part of Chris Benoit's career instead of what he turned into. But are you comparing this in any way to the post WrestleMania 20 period with Benoit? We Smarks loved it. We loved that Benoit was on top. It looked like they were catering to us, but it fizzled. Now the booking was
I don't think
horrible.
It fizzled.
Well, the booking was horrible. He's wrestling Kane in a semi-main on a pay-per-view.
Yeah, but those pay-per-view, if memory serves me correct, he didn't flop at the box office, did he?
Well,
I mean, he wasn't pushed very. I mean, he wasn't pushed. I mean,
I don't think he. I don't think he.
I mean,
he
wasn't Hulk Hogan in 1986.
No.
I mean,
he didn't drag him down. They were at a lower ebb. They were at that post-boom slump. He didn't. All right, so you're right. He didn't drag him further. He also didn't raise him up the way they were hoping WrestleMania 20 would. So it's a thing where I look at that like I'm almost making a comparison to right now, because we Smart Marks loved the CM Punk stuff. We loved the Benoit stuff at the time. But are you saying that there's a larger problem with the populace as far as the thing getting traction with CM Punk?
I remember when CM Punk first came in.
Okay.
And people like you and me were like, "Oh my God, just push him right away!"
Right.
He should be. My God, he should be making WrestleMania.
I remember your early shows.
His first WrestleMania, he should be in the main event. Yeah. Right. My God, this guy's so good. My God, I got DVDs with him on it from 03. But Paul Belfi.
I remember that
name
I
up.
remember
Yes.
that guy. Yeah.
Can I, Milo, say we can edit this out? Yes. Okay. That other guy. Can I say the guy with the mustache?
Go for it. Yeah. No. There's
the guy with the mustache.
This is not a Belfry-free zone. You can talk about that. Yeah.
I was like, I don't understand why all these people are hyping this CM Punk.
Well,
remember that? And to me, he is, and I'm not trying to rip on anyone here. Maybe I am.
Paul's the classic anti-smart mark, though.
Yes, where he's like, oh, what's this guy so good for? You know, it's like, to me, you know, there are people like that. Like CM Punk, it's interesting. People always say, you know, he gets these loud cheers. Mm-hmm. But they always say, what are the reports always say? It's not a lot of people. They're just cheering really loud.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I don't think he doesn't have, like, that Steve Austin. You know, people like, well, everyone wants to compare CM Punk to Steve Austin as like this anti-establishment rebel.
Money in the Bank was probably the biggest pop since the boom period.
Yes, but see,
that was his hometown.
See, when people who don't really like my friends that are my age that loved wrestling when they were younger and don't really watch anymore now want to know, they always like ask these like generic like these questions that I couldn't possibly give them a simple answer. Like, why is wrestling not as good anymore? You know, like is what people will say. You know, maybe a person that would read like a Bill Simmons might ask something like that. And he writes okay stuff on wrestling, I think.
In a word, creative.
Yeah, okay.
Notwithstanding.
Well, no. Part of the problem is the death of the territories.
Yeah. Guys are green.
Because the jump from non-WWE to WWE is so tremendous. Where back in the day, okay, WWE was realistically, since like 85, 86 was always the number one game in town. But and it obviously has become more and more, you know, up as the years have gone on. But when you went from like when the Rockers, I'm just first thing that comes to mind. When they went from the AWA to the WWE, they were ready. They were ready. They were ready. It was not like going from Ring of Honor to the WWE. You know, when they took guys from, you know, something else. I don't know. When Randy Savage came from Memphis to WWE, that was not this huge.
There's all the examples.
The crowds were bigger, the production was better, but they were seasoned. They were ready
when they
to
would
go.
Rate, I mean, the best example would be when he was rating Watts, because Duggan and DiBiase and all of those, JYD, boom, 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 those guys were ready before they got there.
And they had worked in a lot of different places and learned a lot of different styles.
Drawn money.
Where the WWE now, there's basically two styles of wrestling. There's the WWE style.
Yeah.
And there's the indie style.
Right.
You know, and then there's I guess there's these crappy people that are in TNA that still populate the upper card of TNA that are just doing what, you know, that actually were from the territory eras that, you know, just stink. You know, I mean, their style is we're really old and we're desperately trying to do spots that we used to do, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
But how embarrassing is Sting, by the way?
Yeah. It's awful. And I've always been a guy that's appreciated Sting. When I was a kid, I popped for him.
I put on TNA once and saw him behaving like the Joke. I thought it was the worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's an embarrassing coda to his career. But you could say that for Kurt Angle, Ric Flair, and anybody else that wrestles for them
sure.
these days. You know, it doesn't separate them. But Ring of Honor, though, It's an interesting thing here because I understand the indie style is different, but this whole notion that they might be trying to fashion more of a relationship with Ring of Honor, and I understand Ring of Honor is not going to overtly take the bottom position in the relationship to where it's the developmental thing, but that of being a thing where guys are in Ring of Honor, get ready to go to the WWE. It seems to me that might be more of a good thing and something at least close to what you're talking about. The closest thing that's possible in today's climate is to have a place to try to get guys ready for that. FCW doesn't do it. With all due respect, you're not working crowds big enough.
There aren't enough places now where they could do this, but a couple of years ago, the early part of the decade, there were the indies. There was more than just Ring of Honor. Mm-hmm. You know, you have groups out west, other groups in the Northeast. You had CZW. I thought the WWE should have bought all these indie groups and made them into mini territories.
Yeah,
and I'm going to tell you why. Not only could it get these guys you've never heard of seasoned and ready for that, but when you get another issue they have is, you know, Jim Duggan. You mentioned his name before. Mm-hmm. Here's a guy who's Jake Roberts is another guy. Very, you know, not the greatest wrestler of all time, but very fondly. If you talk to people our age, and assuming they've watched wrestling, they don't completely hate wrestling or whatever, and they've watched it, something they enjoyed it at least for a small period of time.
Right.
They remember those guys. Obviously, they could probably, oh man, remember that snake when he used to throw him on there? You know, whatever. We laugh at it, but I mean, hey, it accomplished its goal, right? Those guys were only in the company for like 6 years.
Right.
You got guys like Kane and stuff who've been around for like 12. And it's like, guys like that, it's just needless filler on these shows. You could send these guys, they're still making their good money, but they're not onto, you send them in territories, it keeps these smaller, can you imagine like sending like, I mean, Kane's a bad, I'm just using Kane as an example, but you send him to do a program in Ring of Honor for like 6 months. Okay, maybe it attracts, now the Ring of Honor diehards will not like that.
Is that at all similar to like the Six Flags Louisville type shows?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was a good idea. And guess when developmental was good for the WWE, by the way? Yes. And now, granted, you need smart people, okay?
Right.
You can't have some of the morons they got running this thing now.
Right.
Okay, I mean, Jim Cornette obviously did a great job getting these guys and whatnot. But, yes, those are the kind of things where – but it's different where you take it a step further. Where Kane's just like – he's just gone. You just don't mention him ever on WWE TV. Now, I don't know how you do – like, it'd be interesting to see when he came back. Well, no. Screw that, because the comeback pop. That's like the number one thing. It's so funny with the comeback pop, too. This is a phenomenon I want to talk about.
Okay.
I don't even know if any of the last half hours made sense.
No, it has.
It's so interesting to me with the comeback pop. Triple H started this in 2002 when he came back for the Rumble.
It's a beautiful day.
Yeah, yes. Christian, he's just out there spinning U2 records. But it doesn't matter if you're a good guy. These days, it does not matter what you were doing before the comeback.
Right.
You will always get cheered for the comeback pop because people are just happy to see you.
Right.
Isn't that great? Like,
and if guys are trying to come back and be heels, then they have to work real hard. Although, having said that, there is a part of that that's timeless because I remember from Ric Flair's book when he came back in 1976 after the plane crash, he was a real object of sympathy. The man broke his back, for God's sakes. The first skit that he does out on TV here, he's going through this whole, got all these cards and letters, whatever. Throws them on the floor. I got one from Raquel Welch and one from Joey Hetherington, and the rest of you can go cram it.
Yeah.
And that's how he did it.
So,
to a certain extent, it's timeless.
Mr. Kennedy, by the way, who unfortunately because he's been soiled by the atmosphere of TNA.
Yeah.
I never thought he should have been cut. I liked him. I saw potential.
Yeah, but Randy Orton whined about how he allegedly injured him or tried to.
Yeah, well, Randy Orton ain't nothing special.
No.
Okay. Overrated.
His fecal matters in the purses are another story, but he himself
I like
is
that,
not.
Though. You know me. That's going to get on my side. But I remember he did it great. He did it to what you said. I'll never forget this. I don't know what it was from. Might have been maybe 07. Okay? It was right after he got injured. Remember? Oh, no, I remember what it was from. I remember exactly what it was from. Remember, he wins Money in the Bank. Okay?
Yeah.
And he got injured. They thought he was going to be really injured, so they took his thing away from him. Remember? And then it turned out he wasn't that injured, and he came back. Yeah. And he came out, and everyone was going crazy for him because they were happy to see him back. And I remember so you'll have to look this up on YouTube or something like that. He did something great to really get the crowd against him and stuff like that. But you're right. To me, it can be done, but a lot of these guys don't have the talent to do it.
That's true. That is kind of thing of separating the men from the boys. Well, you and I had talked off air about when you were doing the old SNS show in 2006, talking about John Cena and about how he was struggling against Kurt Angle, against Triple H, because people weren't playing around with the heel-face dichotomy the way that they were supposed to. Flash forward to the summer of 2011 with him and CM Punk, a little bit of the same thing here. I have a larger question to ask you, because you're a historian. You followed the thing, as do I, over the period of time. From 2006 to 2011, I'm just going to pick out those 5 years. Maybe you could even go back in time a little further than that. Can you remember a 5-year period with as much continuity in the wrestling business as we've seen? If you were to take WWF 84 to 89...
I think continuity is the wrong word.
Staleness?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean...
Because it's so interesting, because I've never... It's so interesting because where you were going with this, and I didn't mean to cut you off. That was rude.
No,
that was rude.
You got the gist
was
of my,
rude.
You got
but
the gist
John
of my
Cena
point.
is almost the same person, the same exact character.
He is
today that he was in 2006. You got the same dueling chants. The same. The kids and the women like him. The smart marks don't. Is he good? Should you're asking the same questions. Should they turn him heel? Merchandising says no.
Well,
that's so interesting to me that they would consider that, because back in the day, that never would have happened. They would have turned him heel in a heart, because what's funny is, and here's my point in this.
They're marketing to kids, though, and all the merchandising's to kids, and you cut off the kids' sale if he goes heel.
But has there ever been a wrestler like this?
No.
Because it's interesting, because it used to be people like you and I, we can reference some matches here that a lot of the younger crowd that just came in after the second have no idea about. I'm talking about matches like Dynamic Dudes, Freebirds, Halloween Havoc '89. You remember this match? Rockers, Power and Glory, SummerSlam '90. Now those were both in Philly, but it used to be. Remember back in the day when it used to be like this really cute cult thing when the babyface got booed out of the building?
Yeah.
It was just like, whoa, like you got to watch this match just because the baby. It was so shocking to see a match where the babyface would get booed out of the building.
Right.
It was kind of something like a company would never be like, let's never bring up this match ever again.
Right.
And we're going to turn this act heel because that's awful. You can't be a babyface and draw that kind of reaction at a show.
Right.
Cena's been drawing it now for 6 years, and they've still got a position as the top babyface. I don't know what that means, really. I guess, I mean, I don't know if they're the stupidest, most stubborn group of people in the world, or if these fans are just kind of like, got to get with, I don't know.
You know what the worst part is?
It's just so weird. I've never, John, there's literally never been to be a top babyface for as long as he has. I mean, you're talking Hogan territory, and that's it.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Austin's top run. I mean, he had that stupid heel run in 01, which he did well with, but it was ill-fated. But yeah, I mean, basically, his run at the top was 98 to 02.
Austin abbreviated by injury.
And that's with a huge injury that took him out of 2000.
Yeah.
I mean, other than Hogan, no one's had a bigger run as a babyface on the top than Cena ever in the history. Well, I mean, post-Hogan era. I mean, you got the Bruno Sammartinos, but,
Bob Backlund says hi also.
Bob Backlund stinks, though. Well, that's kind of interesting, too. People booed him a lot when he was positioned.
Oh, they did.
Except towards the end. But their stubbornness, it's just so bizarre.
Well, here's the thing, though, too. No, it's avoidable. I mean, not completely avoidable. We could sit here and play Monday morning quarterback, but it's not. It's at least part of it was avoidable, and it is provable. And here's why. You look at what was happening this year in the build-up to WrestleMania with him and The Rock. All right, now The Rock was still blowing him away, but he was starting, and he still peppered it with a little bit of too cuteness, but he was starting to go back in the direction a little bit of 03 when he first turned face, and then he got cut off by the PGism, and OMG, can't make gay slurs, and, the gay groups are jumping on him and stuff like that. If Cena was a little more like he used to be back when he first
that
turned
would help.
face,
You're right. That would help because
that
crowd does. It's not a cure-all.
It's not a panacea.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to draw X amount
Right.
of dollars because you start calling people queers. I mean,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? But I mean,
Right.
but it would certainly help. No,
Yeah.
but I'm kidding.
I would laugh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you're right. That does hurt his case that he's kind of in the PG ear. He's kind of
Right.
seen as like this PG melting pot of like Austin, Rock, and Hogan. You know what I'm saying? Like they've kind of taken parts that they like out of those three.
Let's not forget Bob Backlund, because he, in many ways, he's Bob Backlund 2K11. He would never in a million years believe he's Bob Backlund, but the whole squareness of the character relates to Bob Backlund like nobody else that I've ever seen.
Yeah, and he also, some of it's not his fault,
right?
In that he the writing is really lousy.
Yeah.
And that he's I don't know if it's just the way it's booked. Like, there's a lot of that everyone always complains about that comedy.
Weak-ass comedy.
Yeah, it's bad comedy. And that, like, he doesn't take the angles seriously and stuff like that. I mean, the stuff with Del Rio was good, so.
We talk about the Attitude Era, but has there been anybody post-1989 that's drawn with, he fights for what's right? That's more dated than even the Attitude Era. That's straight 80s.
No one buys that anymore.
No.
I mean, I don't like superhero movies because I don't believe. It's kind of funny that, like, I'm kind of, like, not complaining, but hypothesizing about something that I truly believe in. That like I don't believe in like this. It's just hard to find, I guess, in Austin. 98, a Hogan in 86, where just everybody likes him,
right?
And it's just really tough. I mean, here's the perfect example. Michaels, in 96 was their top babyface, right?
Right.
He was getting booed hard on some shows. Survivor Series 96 and MSG. Now MSG always hated Shawn, but he got booed out of the freaking building that night. Okay. They tried, like with Cena, to be like, Shawn Michaels our guy. He's going to still be a babyface. Lost his smile. People hated him even more. Okay, because that. And what did they do with him? They turned him heel.
Yeah,
and he was to me. Now he's not a merchandising guy like Cena, but
here's the thing, though. But in '96, they were doing so much along the lines of the Chippendales crap. Here's the funny thing. Later in his career, they figured it out. He's the showstopper. In '96, when he was in his athletic prime, it should have been he won the championship because he's the best in the world. He goes out there, and if he had been presented as he is the best instead of he's the boy toy still and all this other stuff, then maybe he could have gotten over, but they completely alienated the male audience.
Well, here's what's interesting. Cena, I would argue, is the exact inverse or the opposite of that. He's pushed as he is the best. CM Punk brought this up, and he's not the best. He's the most... I don't know what he is, to be honest. Why is John Cena... Answer me, why is John Cena on top?
But he sells merchandise to kids. He's a money-printing machine when it comes to merchandise for kids.
Is that the only reason that he's on top?
Because,
why else?
Oodles and oodles and oodles of money.
You're made the head writer of WWE tomorrow.
Yeah.
Why do you keep John Cena on top as your number one babyface? Just for that? Is there any other reason other than what you just told me?
There would be no other reason.
How do you
to
package him then to the audience at large? It's like, because kids aren't going to understand. Like kids just they do just like him. I mean, they don't really probably comprehend. They should, because no other wrestler could sell a T-shirt to me quite like this guy could, right? But to the other, the smarter audience that does not like John Cena,
right?
How do you get John Cena over to them? Or can you?
You know what? Maybe what you do, maybe what it takes is just a year or so of just straight out moving him out of the title picture. Something like the Nexus feud, but more prolonged.
Maybe you do a good angle where he loses a lot and he has good matches. Maybe, I don't know, or he
like a redemption thing. Okay, that could be.
Like maybe like they do something with a Tommy Dreamer Raven type thing, where he just somebody just owns him.
I worried that would be too smart. Well, part of it is too.
No, I'm not saying just like it. I'm not saying
they're terrified though. If he loses too much, he'll be seen as a loser. Let's go back to what we said before. No, because
would he though? I think he's bulletproof. I'm not talking about having him lose every pay. Well, now hold on. The Rock, by the way, it's pretty funny. Remember that famous interview with Triple H?
Yeah.
Where the top guys, I don't think there's ever been an instance in the history of wrestling where a top guy has lost all these pay-per-views and still would view as a top guy. And they're like, well, Rock's lost every pay-per-view the last 6 months. And he's like, well,
that's true. That's true.
You know what I'm saying? I think if you get to a certain level,
right,
and there's not many guys at that level, you can lose several pay-per-views in a row.
But there's so much institutional mistrust, and that they're afraid to book Cena too weak. That's where it comes from. Super Cena stems from the front office's insecurity that if he loses too often, he'll be seen as a loser and the merch will drop. That's it. There's nothing more to it than that.
It's
that cut and dry.
I think they're
in their eyes.
I have no proof of this, but I think they're wrong, and I think that's it. I think that's the way, because I think a certain audience, like the audience, looks at him and they're only pushing this guy for what you said, and that's not good enough for that's not good enough for me.
Audiences do demand a payoff, though, and the whole thing is you can't drag out things to where the babyface loses for too long or whatever. Because
he can get his revenge.
I know you disagree with me, but I thought the NWO craps, the first Sting Hogan match was dragged out way too long. You couldn't do it 18 months after the start of the invasion.
I think the buy rate says differently. The execution of the match was atrocious.
The one buy rate, and then what happened in 98 and 99?
Yeah, not because they waited 18 months.
They looked like the whole
no. It wasn't because they waited
losers after 18 months. They looked like losers.
No, they looked like losers because of the next 10 minutes, not that 18 months. The match itself, that match isn't.
I'm not letting them off the hook for the match.
If Sting comes out and crushes Hogan clean, and the NWO, this is to me. If I don't like fancy booking, sometimes whatever, I take it or leave it. But if I rebook WCW. Wish I had some time in recently to do, but
little summer vacation.
Yeah. This is a young man's summer vacation. But you have Sting go in and just crush Hogan at Starrcade.
Okay.
Well, the match wasn't going to go long anyway. You just have him crush him. Bret Hart, I remember Dave Meltzer talked about that when Bischoff described that. Remember how Bret Hart came down and the whole idea of first of all, Hogan's an ass. Okay, right. Hulk Hogan is an ass.
Right.
All right, I don't care because you want to talk about people, why are you so critical of him? When he went into business for himself with colluded with Nick Patrick to ruin the booking of that match, you're an ass.
Yeah.
Because Meltzer tells a story how Bischoff was just so proud of himself for this idea he came up with that, okay, they're going to do this Montreal ripoff, and Montreal was hot at the time. It was a month removed. Bret Hart's going to come down and say, no, we're not doing it this way. He's going to restart, and Sting's going to crush him, and it's going to be so awesome. Well, that could have been okay.
It's predicated on the first 3 count not being a real 3 count.
Yeah, exactly. But to me, even doing that was kind of stupid. It should have literally, honest to God, I know it's your huge match at the biggest show of the year.
Right.
It should have been a 5-minute match where Sting's just no-selling everything and destroying him.
Yeah.
And then the next night, Kevin Nash and Hogan get into a huge argument. NWO splits up.
Okay.
WCW, I'm not guaranteeing that it would still be in business today if they just do that and work from that.
That would
help. But it would have been a lot. The ship wouldn't have sank as quick.
All right. Well,
why did we get to that match? By the way,
maybe we can find a compromise point of view here on this. Would you agree with me then that? I go back to you can't drag out the babyface win indefinitely. If they went to this 8 pay-per-views a year, if it was 8 because my whole thing is you can't have month after month John Cena looking up at the lights. I think they're way too insecure, and you think they're way too insecure. We're not disagreeing on that.
I also don't think you could have John Cena month after month in the main event.
No.
Winning.
But here's the thing, too.
Or trading wins and losses.
I'm going to go back to your original critique on this, and I'm going to tell you my answer to what you're talking about, this divided audience thing here. The audience is divided not completely because of this, because they're conditioned to be split because of these different factors, but it's because John Cena's in the way. If John Cena moved to SmackDown and CM Punk was the focus, I'm the guy taking on this WWE establishment, whatever, I think it'd be a different story. John Cena's in the way because as long as you have Punk and Cena as now the biggest faces on Raw, you will always have the split.
Because they're trying to have their cake and eat it too.
Yes, you can't do that.
That's vintage them. When rather than book things properly, they're like, okay, we'll give the kids their guy, and we'll give the smart marks their guy,
right?
And it doesn't work out.
Right.
I mean, it works better in theory than in practice. You know, I can see why they would do it,
right?
Because in the boardroom it sounds real good. Oh yeah, we're gonna this way. We've got a guy on top that appeals to everybody. But wrestling doesn't work that way. Is what they don't understand.
Right.
Now, see, you just opened a huge can of worms.
Okay.
I hate the brand extension.
Sure.
You know me. I have bitched about the brand extension, and you'll never believe. There's only one person who knows the true reason I hate the brand extension the most. The best reason. The old little fella.
Okay.
The little guy.
Okay.
He was stunned when I told him why I hated it.
Why?
And then he thought about it. He's like, oh, wow, that's a real good answer.
Why?
Especially coming from me. Too much first-run wrestling to watch in a week.
Well.
Because keep in mind.
What's your idea? Just cancel a show?
No. SmackDown is already the B show, right?
Yeah.
Treat it like just let's stop. Look, it's on Friday because let me tell you something. The way it's
mid card mania, pretty much top to bottom.
No, you can have top guys on there.
Okay,
but first of all, there's showing me one. This was what's laughable. And see, they don't understand this because they're too far in the forest.
Okay,
to understand a couple of these trees. Okay, I had a couple guys over to watch SummerSlam, and they kept talking about there will only be one WWE champion after this match. Well, what the hell? I just watched Randy Orton and Christian.
Right.
There's actually 3 champions.
Right.
So there should not. The split champion is stupid. First of all,
right.
Okay. But my original point is the way that WWE is currently set up, where you have the Raw brand and the SmackDown brand. Now it looks like they're kind of kind of clouding that a little bit, which makes the two championships even stupider.
Yeah. A soft merger is the stupidest thing of all.
Again, too scared. Scared cowards, as Mike Tyson would say.
Right.
The way it is, you have to watch to be emotionally invested, you have to watch 2 hours of Raw and 2 hours of SmackDown every week. Now, I watch. Now, I'm going to not sit here and tell you I don't watch more than 4 hours of wrestling per week.
Right.
Okay, I'm not going to tell you that.
Right.
I usually do. Two of them, even if two of them are Raw.
Right.
But to ask most people, a large number of people, to watch 4 hours of first run wrestling week is too much.
Yeah, it is.
It's too much, and that's why SmackDown's always seen as the B show anyway, because when people are going to pick, they're going to pick Raw, because first of all, SmackDown's on a Friday, and people go out on Fridays. Monday's not a big going out night. So why not just, and Buck Woodward, we agreed on one thing ever in the history of talking wrestling. The brand extension is just a lazy way to not be able to. It's just a lazy way to book two shows. Okay, these guys are going to be on this show. These guys are going to be on this show.
Agreed.
It's laziness. To me, it's like you don't have to have the same guys on the same show every week. You don't have to. Obviously.
Well, I wouldn't have abandoned WCW. I would have tried. I think you got to do it as two separate promotions.
I disagree.
Well, here's the only thing that I'm concerned about, because I thought the brand extension was a bad idea, but the whole psychology of you're only going to have a handful of guys on top. You risk getting stale. It's the same matchups and everything like that. Part of it is too, you don't have a thing where we go back to Ring of Honor. In Ring of Honor, regularly, and you've watched 1,000 times more of it than I have, maybe more so, but you can have top guys band together and win the World Tag Team title, and that is hugely meaningful. If you had that in the WWE, it might be a little bit different. If you could do a thing where John Cena could tag up with somebody, say The Miz or whatever, if they do an odd couple route, whatever it is, and win the World Tag Team titles, and it's not considered a step down. Now, the tag pennies are considered to be a step down from that. But barring that, I mean, that's my whole thing about ending the brand extension. How do you have, in one promotion, John Cena, Randy Orton, CM Punk, all faces, by the way, in there? Things might be even worse by the metric of what you're talking about.
I disagree. They have fewer over people than they've ever had, yet more champ. You're falling in the trap. Oh, this guy's somewhat over. We've got to get him a title to recognize that he's somewhat over. Once again, the Jim Duggan, Jake Roberts syndrome. Widely popular, 6-year runs, never had titles. You don't have this concept. I hate that concept. Oh, this guy's a little bit over. He's got to have some sort of title.
But here's a problem, though. Jim Duggan was, I think, multiple times, or at least once, North American champion.
You got to keep in mind, not a lot of people know that.
But here's the thing, though. The audience wasn't conditioned to seeing him with a belt. These guys now, this entire generation has come up on, if you're that great, you're going to have a world title. Less is more doesn't play with this generation.
I think it can. I think you can recondition him. Keep in mind this.
Okay.
Because first of all, what they're doing isn't working. Okay, you talk about, less time. Oh, it's going to be all taken up by the top guys. Number one, it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. First of all, you need to be skilled, and you need to know how to budget your time properly.
Okay.
Raw and Nitro used to be 1-hour shows, and they used to draw bigger buy rates than what the WWE gets now. Yeah, 4 hours of first run programming.
Right.
Now, granted, they had Saturday, your WCW Saturday nights and some of these other fringe
Power Hour.
Yeah, but no one. But those shows never did anything. Those shows really never added to buys. It was hitting them hard. I've been watching the old Nitros.
Okay.
For instance, for now, and I don't like it. Okay, there's stuff I do look, but what I don't like, this Hulk Hogan giant angle was pretty stupid in retrospect. It's kind of, it's almost downright embarrassing now to watch. But you know what they did? They just kept hitting you with it, hitting you with it, hitting you with it, hitting you with it, and they made it seem really important.
Okay.
What you need to do to sell pay-per-view is find one angle to be real important. The mid-card stuff, believe it or not, and this is coming from a guy who likes all those matches, you don't need a lot of setup for that. To me, they overbook this stuff so much that by the time you actually get to the show, you no longer care.
Right.
Whereas with the mid-card, they'd be better just, you got a month. Just do, on one of these shows, just shoot some sort of basic conflict and say, okay, these two guys are going to wrestle out.
Okay.
They'd be better with that. Less is more with wrestling. You're right, they've conditioned the audience to think differently, but I think the stats would show that they're wrong in doing so. Because the numbers show that when less was more.
Yeah.
For Christ's sake, what did some of these old WrestleManias do by rates when they had syndicated, when there was no Monday Night Raw? They had syndicated shows.
Right. That's true.
They put 93,000 people, I mean, not to go real old school on here, in the Pontiac Silverdome with syndicated program, with squash matches.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's true. That was
you know what I'm saying?
That was the epitome of less versus more. You never
squash
saw
match, and now granted, it was different because you were actually going to see the big stars. I mean,
right. Nobody faced off.
I'm not saying to go back to squash matches,
right?
But I think they do too much. They have too many, guys who have some potential. They square off that. They get in this thing. Shit, everyone, craps on us when we don't do a clean finish, so someone's got to lose. And they have too many people are losing on these shows.
Okay.
If they would just pace themselves better, make things seem more, because nothing seems important on these shows ever. That's the thing. That's the great irony of wrestling in the last 5, 6, whatever years, is that they try to make everything seem so important every segment, and yet nothing does. When back in the day, they just went about their business and stuff, like that Hulk Hogan Giant match. They just hit you, my God, Monster Truck Challenge. It was stupid. I mean, I didn't like it. I mean, I didn't order the pay-per-view way back when either, so maybe this is a bad example. But I guarantee, shows like that seem to draw a lot more interest than, I don't have the buys in front of me, but and Halloween Havoc 95 is probably a terrible example, but you know what I'm saying? Like older pay-per-views, more people are buying those, at least domestically, than are buying, domestic pay-per-views at an all-time low right now. So that says to me you're doing something wrong. What you're doing is wrong.
While we're at it, all right, if we're going to recommend a reform package for them here, would you agree with me? Ideally 8 pay-per-views a year, no more than 10, but you got to scale it because you can't, particularly if you're doing a merger, if you're doing less titles, whatever, you can't be giving the same matchups month after month. I know you're saying you're going to cycle through the matchups, but no, to me, you
can do 12 a year. But here's the thing: they're so conditioned to the world title match has got to be the main event, and usually, it should be,
And it has to be if there's only one world title.
I don't think it does.
Really?
I don't think it does. First of all, these concepts.
Short of like Cena versus The Undertaker, I'm hard-pressed to think of what goes on after a world title match out of their present crew. What justifies it?
But keep in mind, I'm thinking outside the box.
Okay.
I'm talking about blowing up the infrastructure. You're telling me that you cannot, and once again, you have to use your imagination here, which is rough. You're telling me just that you, and maybe it's the wrong one, maybe it doesn't work out that well, but you're telling me that if you were given the book, again, of WWE, that you could not make a non-world title match, at least on one pay-per-view, between two guys, you could not book an issue seem more important than a world title match. You're telling me you couldn't do that.
Like once in the course of a year? I could do
maybe twice.
Once, maybe twice, maybe. It also depends on the latitude I have here, too. As we're sitting here recommending
Remember Shawn Michaels once again, Shawn Michaels Undertaker is, you're talking about two of the all-time greats.
Right.
But back in '97,
right?
Remember Shawn? He let Brett know about it quite frequently on Raw. You know, hey, maybe you're the world champion, but unless you're wrestling me, you're only support on my pay-per-views.
If you're if we're talking about returning guys, if we're talking about special
Triple
attractions,
H has done it too.
Okay,
before.
yeah.
You can do it. It just takes quality booking.
Right.
They do it the lazy. Okay, let's see. All right, we got 2 world titles. Like now, it's perfect for them because it's lazy crap. Okay, we got 2 world title matches, so that gives us 2 big matches on every pay-per-view. But yet, no one cares about either of them.
But here's the thing, though: by having 12 pay-per-views a year, it is obligatory to have John Cena on there, Randy Orton on there. At this point, CM Punk on there, whatever.
I don't think you would have
to. You can't recondition the audience.
I think you can.
There's no way. You're not getting. John Cena's healthy, but you're not getting him this month. You can't. You can't put the toothpaste back in that tube.
You could put him in a non-important match, or just a match that isn't the main event. To me,
John Cena versus the Duke of Dorchester. I don't think people are going to go for that. That's.
I don't know. Maybe you just shoot. The Rock wrestled I went to a pay-per-view in '99 where The Rock wrestled a British Bulldog, where it had to do with rock bottoming people and dog poop.
The Bulldog was getting a pretty good push, though.
Yeah, but he wasn't very. But let's be honest,
he wasn't good. No,
okay,
no.
yeah, he wasn't that good, and history shows that was a throwaway angle. Rock also Rock again. Because I'm using the Rock in '99 as an example because it goes in the face of all the Triple H WWE thinking. I'm not a Triple H hater by any means. Wrestled Mr. Ass on the second biggest pay-per-view of the year that year. Throwaway match.
You're kind of making my point for me. Coming off of King of the Ring, getting a big push.
Well,
Both times he was getting guys doing a big push.
I'm not telling you Cena would be jerking the curtain
half
the year.
Right.
But he did, the whole idea is, we've got 2 title matches, we've got to find a way for this guy to be involved, this guy. That's laziness.
But Kyle, with only 1 title, how many and again, in our ideal perfect world, John Cena wouldn't be, the planet that the stars are circling around with the world title picture here. How do you get John Cena 12 matchups a year, particularly if he's not the world champion? I'd rather only have to answer that question 8 times. I wouldn't want to have to answer that question 12 times a year.
Sure, it would be, but to me, that's a lot of things I've said aren't going to happen. That's unrealistic. You're not going to get to me. Steve Austin, again, he was on a paper. This is sad. I could probably do it. Steve Austin. All right. First of all, you have what's interesting? They try these concept pay-per-views, but devalue the concept of them. Okay.
Right.
It's so interesting. They have a pay-per-view called Hell in a Cell now, but Hell in a Cell, in my opinion, is viewed as low as it's ever been.
Yeah. Okay. It's October, so it means it's time for people to hate one another enough to go into Hell in the Cell.
There's ways
we don't have any feuds,
Steve
but whatever.
Austin. Okay. Let's talk about Steve Austin's great year '98. I'm about ready to make you vomit because I'm going to do this without looking at any page. I think. All right. 1998, he wins the Royal Rumble.
Yes.
Okay. No Way Out of Texas, by the way, in parentheses. It was not just No Way Out. For some reason, it was No Way Out of Texas, which, by the way...
Secret guy in the ring.
Yeah,
Savio Vega.
Yeah, that's what Republicans, by the way, threaten us with, I think. No Way Out of Texas. But they did that. That was a pay-per-view, and then people say, well, that's stupid. I would never stand for that. Really? WrestleMania 14 didn't do very well? So obviously that pay-per-view worked. It was kind of a clear... It was what I think many people call, and I'm not saying you could get away with that now, because you're right, the audience has
that
the
was Clash of the Champions on pay-per-view, is what that was.
Okay, and it probably didn't do that great, but guess what? In the grand scheme of things,
didn't hurt Mania. You're right.
It didn't hurt Mania. It helped it because it built up tension for what was. Remember back then, Austin Michaels.
You're not helping them, Rome. You're hurting them.
Yeah, you're not helping. Yeah. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yes, but no, it built up WrestleMania. It was very logical. Okay, yeah.
Right.
Not every See, again, they try to have this mentality. Every pay-per-view's got to be the biggest one ever. The Tony Schiavone syndrome.
Right.
Well, guess what? That mentality hasn't paid the frickin' bills, in my opinion. Some pay-per-views are not... All pay-per-views are not inherently created equal. And guess what? WrestleMania is obviously the big one, right? What's the one that draws?
WrestleMania.
Okay, well, it's not because it's so much better booked.
Right.
It's just because it's the one that people view as the best.
Right.
It's going to be the biggest. They've come to expect a certain thing.
Right.
You can't do that 12 times a year.
So Austin popped it at Mania and did great there.
Okay. He wrestles Backlash. Okay, what do? Okay, so he challenges for the championship. Okay. Earns title shot. Clash of Champions on pay-per-view where he was supposedly going to be in the ring with the champion. The champion was hurt, whatever. I mean, it's, but it still built tension for that match. He got in there with
it served its purpose.
He stunned China that put heat on the match. Wins title at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Michaels out of the picture now.
Yeah.
By the way, WWE could not have been where it was if they didn't get rid of Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels.
That's
Gary
true.
Hart says whenever a company takes off, you have to get rid of all the old people. They're afraid to do that, WWE. Mm-hmm. All right, so he needs a new challenger, right? Steve Austin, he's the champion, right? Enter Dude Love. Wrestles him once. It's an inconclusive finish. They did the thing where I think it was a DQ finish. Actually.
Yeah, McMahon had interfered.
And he got hit with the chair, which sets up the next pay-per-view where they did the unbelievable match at Over the Edge 98. You talk about a historically underrated match.
By the way, though, you're breaking historic taboos during these pay-per-views of like Vince McMahon coming out from behind the camera. Vince McMahon gets hit by a chair for the first time.
You're right. Now you're right. You're right.
There's no modern.
You're right. You're right that the
equivalent.
Problem is they did pull the curtain back so much. In that era that it's tough. What's the next level?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
That is an issue, but it's an issue no matter which way you go.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. But now what did they now? But hold on here.
Okay.
Steve Austin, Dude Love, oh, you're saying, oh, it's kind of stupid, world title match, non-finish, oh, they're going to wrestle again next month. Well, they had that kind of equally dumb Inferno match that drew a lot of interest. I mean, that was kind of stupid, too. But,
right.
I mean, but these things work. They drew interest. I mean, I may not have liked them, but I can't argue that 98 was better.
Yeah, they were red hot.
Okay, so you've got that.
Yep.
King of the Ring 98.
Yep.
Okay, Steve Austin wrestles Kane now. Okay? And then, well, of course, you had the big Hell in the Cell match, which the pay-per-view's famous for.
I was there. That was completely unforgettable.
And then also, King of the Ring, which that was kind of the year that became kind of a mid-card. Well, I think it had been already, but it was...
Shamrock beating The Rock was pretty huge.
Again, they built it up perfectly. It was... And you have a theme separate of the show. You have something else to sell on the show. Okay? So from a sales perspective, I think we're 6 for 6 here. Okay, then you had... the next pay-per-view, again, what you would call Clash of Champions on pay-per-view, fully loaded, was a tag match, Austin and Undertaker versus Foley and Kane.
That's right.
Okay? Again, not blow away, but we're finding different ways. It's not a world title match with Steve Austin, okay? And that's, of course, to build you got a highway to hell. Okay, you've got that at SummerSlam.
Well, I'm not going to compare... because nothing compares to the whole McMahon part of it, the unprecedented part of Vince McMahon turns into Mr. McMahon. But by the same token, Steve Austin becoming the hottest character since Hulk Hogan, teaming up with The Undertaker, the Hardy perennial over the years, that in and of itself was such a first that I don't think there's no modern equivalent to pairing Steve Austin circa 1998 and The Undertaker for the first time.
Yeah, but
there's no modern equivalent.
I think because you've dug a hole, because keep in mind, now granted, they were coming off an era where things were done a little differently. Things were a little slower.
Right.
When Undertaker and Shawn, one of the things that made the first Undertaker-Shawn Michaels feud so great is they had both been in the company for 7 years, and they had never wrestled.
Right.
Which, I mean, now, it's like, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a match where literally, not the old Hogan Andre, these men have never wrestled before. Andre's undefeated. But, I don't think there's two guys that have been in the company for 7 years that have not wrestled.
No, it's true. But part of that comes from Shawn was a classic climb the ladder kind of a guy. The Undertaker came in at least close to a main event level. They wouldn't have crossed paths because Shawn at that time was a tag guy, then became a mid-card heel, then slowly kind of became, upper mid-card heel. By the time he was a main eventer, it was, at least 5 years.
You're making because they don't do upward mobility like Shawn.
Right, that's true.
You're shooting this stuff. You're telling me like in the like Jeff Hardy. He was once upon a before fell through his life in the crapper. Here's a guy who worked his way up. Edge and Christian.
Right.
I mean, they worked their way up, but the problem is they also take those guys along the way and treat them as jobbers in solo mat and have them job to these guys.
Right.
Which hurts. But that's everything.
Right.
But continuing with, you're right.
SummerSlam,
I'm making this. I'm using the best case example
by far.
Okay,
but proceed.
But I'm showing that it's possible.
Okay.
Okay. The next month they did that triple threat match. Undertaker and Kane. Remember they did that?
Yeah.
It was that screwy way to get the belt off him. They did a double pin on him.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the next pay-per-view he doesn't wrestle. They did Undertaker versus Kane at it was called Judgment Day.
Right.
One was called Breakdown. The other one was called Judgment Day. He's the referee though.
Right.
Okay, the belt was vacant. They did that goofy tournament Survivor Series, which had
that was around the time that he rode my beloved Joe Louis Arena Zamboni to come out and attack them.
Yeah, again.
Yeah.
Okay, the Survivor Series, okay, and he doesn't win it.
Okay.
He was part of, obviously, that was a very big storyline. That's the way WWE does tournaments. They don't do them like the Super J Cup folks, okay? All right, too. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. The next month, Rock is your champion. Okay, believe it or not, there was a time when Rock is a champion. Ooh, I don't know about this. He was in the semi-main against Foley, and then you had Austin Undertaker buried alive.
Right.
Which, a non-world title match, by the way.
Right.
Again, I'm using, they had a lot of things going for him that year. But to say that you can't find ways to do this.
Okay.
Here's the other thing, too. Okay, yeah, I'm using Austin, best case example. That whole year, basically, the last 8 months, they used the same 4 guys in the top matches.
They
5
did.
with The Rock. You got more, you believe it or not, you have more guys now, especially if you merged it, for those top spots.
Here's the thing, though, and I don't want to come off like a hypocrite because I'm the same guy that screams at Larry Dolan, you got to spend money to make money, but what you're talking about here, and I agree in principle with everything that you're saying, but you're talking about a company and one that's publicly traded, no less.
Which I don't like. I think that's been amazing. You know what? It's great for the McMahons, but maybe just a coincidence. Don't you think that the storylines and the booking of wrestling that we used to love, that's kind of what it took a hit?
Being answerable to shareholders, but by the same token, they also consider themselves highly answerable to advertisers, so you're not going to completely get out of the outside influences thing. I agree with you. I think I would say step one in your plan would be company buys back the stock and is not answerable at least to the stockholders, because there's that. But you have that issue. But my point is, you're looking at the company.
Well, step one would actually get someone with a brain in
charge. True, but you'd have to admit on all of this, well, you're making a convincing point on all of this. You're talking about a year of setup. The reconditioning won't happen overnight. It is going to be a brutal MFer of a year while you're getting your pieces in place. You must admit that.
But here's the thing. Is the what's this called? The floor.
Yeah.
Is the floor? I was going to say this. That's not the ceiling. The floor is not that much lower than where you're at. You're not falling off a cliff. You're falling off a ledge.
Okay.
I mean, domestic pay-per-views. I can't stress this enough. Are at an all-time low.
Right.
I mean, you're doing they were happy with doing 150,000.
Right.
That's hideous.
Well, the fact that they're already sort of beating themselves to the point on this next thing I was going to ask you, bringing back Triple H to wrestle CM Punk.
Oh, that's stupid.
Night of Champions. It is. But I mean,
here's a perfect example.
Yeah.
I'm so glad because let me go off on this. I can't even tell you how bass-backwards and wrong this is. Let me tell you how dumb this company is right now. Pay-per-view's called Night of Champions, right?
Yeah.
They're supposed to do these themed pay-per-views if it's not a major one, right? Every match is a championship
match. But it's the only night they've moved to. It's the only night all year all titles are defended. Which, by the way,
is a lie.
Get rid of it. No, it's not a lie because
really there hasn't been one.
Well, see, but what they'll do. Here's what they'll do. There might be a month where there's no women's title match, or it's a tag match.
Again, okay. Most people, really, the crowd at large is going to just think that's dumb. They're nitpicking. That's kind of
we're right, you're not.
Right. They're laughing at me. Oh, smart Mark. Yeah. You think you know it all. Yeah, you were wrong. Well, guess what? It's called Night of Champions, okay? And here they were hyping originally a CM Punk Kevin Nash match, which was not a championship match. Kevin Nash gets hurt, okay? And they can't have the match. Just don't do the damn match.
But it was pointed out, though, that last year they broke the seal on that last year. CM Punk, ironically, against the Big Show, was the first non-title match at Night of Champions. So
why did they do that again? Can you refresh my memory? I was obviously not caring.
They had a stupid feud at the time. It was pointless. It was a pretty stupid thing. But anyways,
now I remember why I don't remember.
Well, I'm just saying it's stupid, but there's precedent for an extra match, is what they would call it. I guess.
Well, here's what I'm saying. Okay,
by the way, no more Night of Champions if you get rid of the brand split, because every month's going to be Night of Champions or close to it.
I mean, do you think that's a big selling point?
It's not a great reason. I'm just saying it's
I was going to say, is somebody listening to this podcast right now saying, God damn you two, it's September, and that means it's time for every title to be defended on a WWE pay-per-view. Really? Is there someone out there that thinks that, Ricky? No, there's not.
I think there's more people that are bemoaning the loss of Fall Brawl in September.
Yes, okay. So here's my thing. First of all, if you're going to do these theme pay-per-views, right, you have a theme, okay?
Yeah.
Just don't do them. Why do you have to, first of all, rush a match that could conceivably draw on a bigger pay-per-view,
right,
on a pay-per-view that ain't going to do diddly poo, that doesn't make sense with your stipulations anyway.
True.
They just shouldn't do. I don't.
It's the month-to-month
because they're scared.
We got to pop a buy rate this month.
We got to have exactly. And guess what's going to happen when they do this match? They're going to be kicking themselves in 2 months when they can't do it at Survivor Series.
Right.
This match was not there hasn't been a big turn. I'll be honest with you, full candor. I did not watch the execution of the angle. I've only read about it.
Okay.
But to me, I don't feel that I even need to watch how it was because it seemed rushed at the end of the show. Triple H is like, well, now I'm going to wrestle you.
Right.
It's not very interesting.
No. But I guess that was my point here. As we're going full circle to wrap this thing up for the night, I guess the last point that I'm going to make to you in the course of all of this, Kyle, is when you get to the whole thing of the whole point of Triple H coming out of, it's not exactly retirement, but coming out of the front office to wrestle CM Punk, I think it then becomes a circumstance where you have a situation available to you. If we're going to go with the way that you're setting things up, if we're going to go to the whole system of that we're going to recondition the audience, there's not going to be as many titles, there's going to be some things that are not about titles. That's my last point for the evening here, is that that's one way to do it, and they've kind of shot themselves in the foot by hot-shotting Triple H here. But for that transitional period of reconditioning the audience, that might be the way of doing it. Like, for example, if it turns out there's a little more juice left in the rind, that The Undertaker might have more than one match in him, you bring back The Undertaker for one of these months. You bring Triple H in. You go the special attraction route as a bridge while you're reconditioning the audience. Is that a way to do it?
Yes. To me, you have 4 or 5 major pay-per-views a year. Okay? The UFC did this, actually, for a while, until they started, they oversaturated the market trying to make everything seem so awesome every month. And that in between, you just set up. See, when I do, and I hate saying fantasy book, even though I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I always think, I don't know how you do it, but this is the way I think about it. Okay, here is the WrestleMania main event. This is what I would like to see at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
I decide what I want to see at SummerSlam. And then you fill in the blanks.
Right, that's how I do it.
You fill in the blanks. They do it like, okay, we have this idea, but they don't worry about filling in the blanks. They just do all these things, and by the time they get to where they want it to be, it's all screwed up.
Right.
To me, it's like, okay, well, you got to make sure you don't screw up.
Right.
This is how we want it to be in there, and you don't do that much, in between. You maybe have just a Clash of Champions on pay-per-view, like you say.
Absolutely.
Or do a 6-man tag or something, or just say, this match. There's just different ways to do it.
Well, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground here tonight, and we got actually 3 podcasts worth out of this. So
okay, good. Yes. Well, I was gonna say when you edit this stuff up, there's plenty to edit. Yes.
Exactly. So we'll be doing it in the pieces. Thanks very much, Kyle Ross. Looking forward to more of these great mini episodes here at the FDH Lounge. Thank you so much, my man.
It was a pleasure, Ricky.
All right, pal. We'll do it again soon. Thank you.